everybody. So I'm doing this video because one of the lovely ladies going through the Cleansing Life Diet Reset program had some really valid concerns and had some really good questions. And I figured if she has some questions about this, I bet everybody's having questions. So her main concern is the amount of protein she's getting with this program and the fact that when you do research on the internet, the majority of what you find says we should be eating a high protein and low carbohydrate diet. So this program really flies in the face of that philosophy because it's really more of a low protein, high carbohydrate diet. And as an educator in the field of plant-based nutrition and holistic living, researching is a huge part of my day. And what I really needed to learn was how to do research so that I would be finding valuable information that I could really use because there's a lot of information on the internet. So sorting through all that was really tough. So I encourage you to do your own research. And I'll give you my 3 guidelines that I have for myself. And hopefully this helps when you're sorting through the ungodly amounts of stuff you'll find on the internet. So the first thing is be sure of the credibility of the source you're finding the information from, meaning take a look at where they get their information from and the background of the person that did the research and the science behind the studies. So, for example, the information in this program I obtained through my certification in plant-based nutrition through Cornell and the T. Colin Campbell Foundation, as well as lots of studies, such as the Harvard Nurses Home Study, lots of books, and just a lot of information I found on the internet that I look for credible sources. I use Harvard a lot, and I really love Cornell University. And so I also have personal experience. So I have experience with diet and nutrition, with macrobiotics, and as well as how diet affects degenerative disease, especially neurological diseases such as multiple sclerosis and ALS, which is also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. And everybody was doing that ALS ice bucket challenge that I thought was awesome to raise awareness. And then also coronary heart disease. My father passed away of coronary heart disease very suddenly. So those are some of the life-threatening ailments. And then I also have experience with food allergies, which could be life-threatening, and eczema, which is horrific, especially when it is coming with children. And my daughter experienced it. So I really saw the power of food. And that is the background of this program. Mixture of scientific studies and experience. So number 2 is to stop for a minute before you research and take a look at your beliefs. And you'll know that you will find information on the internet that supports your beliefs. And you'll also know that you'll find information that will contradict your beliefs. Well, nobody's going to go looking for the information that contradicts what we believe, right? Because then we would be wrong, and that sucks. So nobody wants to be wrong. Why would we look for that information? So I'll tell you a little story though. Many years ago, I went through a program that promoted a plant-based diet, and I always knew how healing plants were. And I also, though, thought that not that we needed to necessarily have like beef or anything, but I thought that we had to have some animal protein because of my beliefs that from parents, from peers, from the news, that we couldn't live without a little bit of animal protein and we had to have dairy for calcium. So my dad was vegetarian, or I guess pescatarian growing up. So animal protein could also be fish. And after all of these years of just this animal protein being ingrained for so many years, I thought that milk did a body good and we had to have milk for calcium and we did need some animal protein in that. And then as the whole Atkins craze came, it seemed like we had to have lots of protein, high protein. And so when I was going through this plant-based diet, I was physically scared that I wasn't going to be getting enough protein and calcium. So one day though, I was at yoga and my yoga teacher, Allison, was talking with some other students and they were talking about this book and how the studies that they found in the book were so compelling that they were considering giving up eating animal foods. So I asked them about it and they said, "No, no, don't read that book. You'll never want to eat animal foods again." And I was like, "Is it graphic? What is it?" And they said, "No, it's just scientific studies." So, of course, what did I do? I went and researched who wrote the book and what their background was. And I read it and it began the shift of my whole belief system. It was like I was hit by a Mack truck. I let in information that I wouldn't have let in before. So these studies really caused me to stop and say, wait a minute, maybe there's some information that I'm missing. So let me back up and say who wrote this book. So you know that guy I was talking about, that I took my plant-based certification through T. Colin Campbell, Dr. T. Colin Campbell. So he trained at both Cornell University and MIT in nutrition and in toxicology. And then he later spent 10 years on the faculty of Virginia Tech's Department of Biochemistry and Nutrition before returning to Cornell, where he now is the chair as Professor Emeritus of Nutritional Biochemistry in the Division of Nutritional Sciences. So that is a mouthful to say, but the cool thing is what he's done. So his main focus has really been the effects of food and nutrition on long-term health, specifically around the connection with cancer. So he's conducted entirely new research on both laboratory studies and long-term human studies, which are hugely costly. So they're very rarely done. He's received over 70 grant years of peer-reviewed research funding, mostly with the NIH. And I'll just stop and say that this is the gold standard when it comes to performing scientific studies and experiments. And he has 70 grant years worth. So he's also served on several grant review panels, and he's on tons of committees and won tons of awards. But now listen to this really interesting twist. He grew up the son of a dairy farmer, and his belief system said you must have cow dairy for calcium and protein and animal protein. So he was very philanthropic and he said, well, what I want to do with my knowledge is I'm going to go to the Philippines and create a better animal protein to help the malnourished children in the Philippines. So he's going there and he's doing his study. And as he's doing his study, even though he knew with every fiber of his being that we have to have high amounts of animal protein to be healthy, the results of his study caused him to stop for a minute and say, whoa, wait a minute, what are these results I'm getting? And the studies were showing that not only did animal protein, not only was it not needed, but that in some cases it was actually harmful. And another issue is that the calories allocated to the animal protein were taking away calories from the healing plant foods that did have protein, but also had all of these healing properties. So, yeah, after learning about his story and all of his studies, I was able to shift my beliefs because I said, look at where he started and look at where he ended up. Talk about an unbiased approach. So, even then, though, I still did further research. So I got all this knowledge, and then I stopped and I said, I'm going to look for more research that supports what he says, and also research that contradicts what he says. And so I spent months looking at that information. And I had to eventually go with what really made sense. And this is where my last tip comes in. Did the researcher look at the whole picture? And what I loved about Dr. Campbell is that he looked at the whole picture. He didn't just look at protein. He looked at the miracle of our bodies and how when we take a food, our body knows how to synthesize all of the vitamins and nutrients in the plant foods, that the plant foods in itself are a miracle. The fact that through photosynthesis they have all these vitamins and nutrients and proteins, and our body knows how to assimilate all these things. So I loved that he took all of that into account, and the fact that science hasn't discovered all of the micronutrients that are in all of these plant foods. So there's all micronutrients and macronutrients, and we think we've got them all identified. We do not. Just like we don't know all the things we need to be putting in the soil, and when we throw chemical fertilizer on the soil, natural organic soil contains tons of vitamins and minerals and compounds and all these things that man will never know, may never know how to synthesize. So when we think about something like protein, we need to look at all the other factors that ride along with it. Animal protein has, yes, it is a high source of protein, but it also has cholesterol and it has a lot of saturated fat, and it doesn't have any fiber. But when you're eating a plant protein, it has fiber, it has all these vitamins and nutrients, it has protein, and it's very healing. And I don't know if there's anyone that will say they don't think vegetables and plants are good for us. So the next thing to kind of think about then is the carbohydrates. So yeah, plants have carbohydrates, but are you saying that we just need to be on a low carb diet, or are these studies you're finding saying we need to be on a low carb diet because of our blood sugar issues? Well, when you think about it that way, there are different kinds of carbohydrates. So we're not talking about pasta and breads and sugars. We're talking about even the difference between instant oats and oat groats. Oat groats take 45 minutes to cook them, and there's a reason, because it's going to take your body a long time to break those down. So you're getting all the vitamins and nutrients, all the fiber, you're getting some protein, and you're getting slow burning energy. It's not going to jack up your body and your digestive system and trigger any insulin issues like an instant oatmeal or like some simple sugars. So those are some things to just keep in mind when looking specifically at these high protein and low carbohydrate diets that people are talking about. So let's recap. The first thing is look at the background and of your sources. Think about your ingrained belief system, and then look at the whole picture. So I hope these tips have helped you, and happy researching. I love to hear from people after they listen to any information that I put out there. So please leave me your comments and questions, and let's get to chatting. Thanks so much, and have a great one.